Hello everyone, I am DOODLEMANZ86 and I have returned from my long slumber to review Godzilla Kong the New Empire. So, I'm going to take this minute to discuss some channel updates, so if you want to see the review, skip like 30 or 40 seconds. But yeah, I just want to say I'm sorry for the wait, you guys. I'm very grateful for your patience and thank you all for 900 subscribers. I love all of you and I'm grateful for the support and love all of you. So I just wanted to say that I haven't found my mic yet, but I'm gonna make videos regardless. I'm gonna try to make some this week, but final exams are coming up, so I might be busy. So I'm gonna try my best to pump some videos out. But yeah, thank you all for waiting with me, and I hope you all enjoy the review. And sorry that I don't have my mic because now the audio is gonna sound kind of crappy. But yeah, this film is the sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong, both directed by Adam Wingard, released on March 29, 2024, and I believe it had a budget of $150 million. This was produced by Legendary Pictures, distributed by Warner Bros., and basically follows up from the last film in which Kong feels lonely in Hollow Earth but discovers a tribe who is being led by a tyrant named Scar King who wants to take over the surface world, which forces Kong to team up with Godzilla and take him down. So, this film is the fifth installment in the monsterverse, and it is awesome. It is crazy and wacky. But before we get to the review, I just want to say, do not compare this to Minus One. Minus One is a very different film and displays a different side of Godzilla's character, one which was created in 1954. He's been an allegory for war and nuclear threat, and so he became a hero in the Showa era of sorts, but the Heisei era returned to that, and every year we see a new portrayal of Godzilla, which is interesting, and I just wanted to say that because it is great and awesome to see Godzilla. We have these two different portrayals of him back to back, which shows the diversity and uniqueness of the character and his survival throughout history and pop culture, which I think is phenomenal. I just love that we can have a serious and dark-toned Godzilla next to a Barbiezilla with teaming up with a big monkey with an infinity gauntlet. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because critics have been bashing this movie for not being like Minus One, but I think we were all expecting this with both films coming back to back. So yeah, there's also been a lot of videos talking about Godzilla dying or just not being good anymore just because of this film, which I want to say is not true. That's just stupid. It's nothing. It's just a team up movie. If anything, it's just a fun film you can turn your brain off for with a pretty good story, but overall what you want, the monsters, that's there. So yeah, there's been a lot of that going around for some reason. So yeah, now onto my review. I will leave the negatives for last, positives first, and sorry, but spoilers because I don't think I can talk about this movie without discussing spoilers. So the film begins with a sequence of Kong being chased in Hollow Earth by wart dogs. Now, I also want to say this. I have praised the MonsterVerse for having such awesome and unique designs, from the Mutos to Shimo to the Ion Dragon. The original designs in the MonsterVerse, the original Titans, are slappers. They are bangers. They are so cool. Even the mini Titans are awesome, which I just had to say because my, the designs in this film are phenomenal. One of the problems I had with Godzilla vs. Kong is that despite being in Hollow Earth for not a lot of the film, it does feel dead. The only thing you see are the warbats, the arachnoclaws, Doug, and that's it. But this film flips that. You see so many new and unique Titans, lots of returning faces and new ones, such as the parrot frog, the Doug, which does happen in the beginning, which I will talk about in a moment. The warbats return, the hellhawks have new colors. It's just lively, and I love seeing that. So Kong ends up cornered, and he ends up ripping I was about to say warbbat, a wart dog in half, and it scares the others off, and he is covered in blood, and he goes to take a shower. And he actually has a wart dog with him, and Doug comes around and tries to steal it from him, but he actually ends up winning. And also, Doug is huge in this movie, or maybe he's always been. I just didn't realize how big Doug really was. He is a big chunky boy. But yeah, there's that. And the funny thing is that the movie starts out with both Kong and Godzilla covered in blood, because in the same sequence, we have Eileen Andrews talking about how Godzilla's fighting our battles for us, which kind of reminded me of Godzilla's Revenge, how he said to fight our own battles, which was a very interesting thing I thought of, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But Godzilla ends up hearing or sensing Scylla in Rome. So Scylla has a new design from King of the Monsters. She is now red and evil and consuming radiation, which pisses Godzilla off. And now he's in Rome and he ends up battling her and ending her very quickly. And he also ends up covered in blood. And the blood in this movie is yellow or green, which I thought was interesting. Not sure if it's some sort of censorship, but hey, I'm fine with it. I don't need blood to be red to see its goriness, so that's always a neat treat. And yeah, it's an interesting and cool sequence. As always, the sequence is very awesome. So much Titan action back to back. I really do like and appreciate that. So then we have Gia, who is trying to fit into society, go to school, but of course, who likes school? And she actually ends up having visions of some future events, all blurry and all very quickly and back to back. And then she actually ends up drawing these signals, which concerns her and Eileen Andrews, who returns in this movie. I like her new hair, by the way. I think they talk about it in the film. I don't remember if it's mentioned, but yeah, the hair looks nice. But she ends up going to the ever so loved, goated Brian Tyree Henry's character, Bernie. I'm not sure if people like Bernie. I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag, but for me, I like Bernie. I think he's fine. If a little too goofy at times, but he's still a fine character. And in this film, I honestly think he fits. I'm pretty sure he fits just right here. And he's the only one who's actually able to realize that it's a distress signal from inside Hollow Earth. And at the same time, an outpost is destroyed within Hollow Earth, which is such a interesting way to set the villain up, you know? I'm not sure if it's implied it's Scar King or one of his troops, but it is interesting that they attack Monarch bases and then they leave the handprint there. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, this basically sets up the story and the whole second act, which is basically 3 parts. Godzilla going around destroying nuclear reactors, gaining radiation, and fighting other titans. Kong and Hollow Earth being led to the Scar King, and then the humans who end up finding a secret Iwi tribe. So I'll go over each one by one. So for the Iwi tribe, they actually go in the new Hollow Earth vehicles after Kong comes up from Hollow Earth, who has a toothache, and that's actually the reason he has a metal tooth. Because everyone thought it was going to be Scar King who knocked his tooth out. But yeah, the humans end up going in the heave, and we actually meet a lot of new titans and mini titans like the Verticine, who will play a role later, which I applaud. There's a lot of movies in which something is set up in the first act and then left alone in the third one. But here we get a look at the Verticine, and at first we see the camouflage and we think, oh, that's neat. But then it actually plays a role later, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, they end up finding an Iwi tribe after the pilot is eaten by a tree monster, which is like, I keep thinking about Godzilla's Revenge because there's a tree monster in that one too. So, you know, Gabara for the next monsterverse villain. But we end up seeing Mothra symbols, and there's some sort of barrier, which is similar to Mothra's egg, which I did call out in my reaction video. And the Iwi tribe were the ones sending the signal and basically what Godzilla and Kong are feeling. And they need Gia, who is the last of the Skull Island Iwi, to summon Mothra. So I'm not sure if it's explained why only Skull Island Iwis can summon her, but I don't know. I think there's also references to Mothra and Kong Skull Island, but so, you know, that could have always been there, but I don't know. I'm a little confused by that, but you know, there's that. And I think it'd be interesting if they set up Infant Island for a future film, but you know, there's that too. So then we have Godzilla's story. So I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like these movies are a lot more Kong-centric. And in the last one, Godzilla, at least to me, just felt like a background character. He didn't do much other than fight Kong in the beginning, swim around, and then show up for the third act. Well, in this one, he has a bigger role. He is going around consuming radiation. This distress signal has him going haywire, and he's battling other titans like Scylla, and then he actually ends up going to Antarctica to battle Tiamat. And we actually get a look inside a Monarch base who classifies Tiamat as a destroyer. So I don't know if it's just me, but I'm a huge fan of like science fiction, like monsters. That's a little mundane to say, but I love monsters. I love world building. Stuff like seeing a gigantic skull 10 times the size of Kong really gets me going haywire, thinking like, wow, what could have that been? What man, my English is booty right now, but what was that thing, you know? I'm really obsessed over little things like that. And I just love all these new little titans. And I love the Hollow Earth idea. You know, I just love stuff like that. It sends me on it's so lovely. And I love seeing that. And so seeing Monarch classified titans is just a nice little addition to the world building in GXK and the overall monsterverse, which I just adore. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little after this little segment of Godzilla's. But yeah, so Godzilla ends up battling Tiamat, who has a redesign too. And I gotta say, it's my favorite Tiamat design. The pink and the overall Manda-esque look, I just love it. I like it more than the comics. I drew all the Monsterverse Titans in a previous Chibi video. And let me tell you, Tiamat was not a fun one to draw. She was one of the hardest ones to draw. But if you want to know my opinion, Titanus Amaluk is the most difficult monster to draw, at least in my opinion, from the Monsterverse. But yeah, something interesting to point out is that Godzilla he's slaughtering Titans left and right. So I guess you could just make the point that that's who the king of the monsters is, battling Titans, defeating them with ease. But Monsterverse Godzilla is just, he doesn't feel like that to me. He feels like someone who would only destroy antagonistic Titans. And I can understand Tiamat and Scylla gaining power to overthrow Godzilla, and that's why he'd kill them. But I don't know, it's just interesting to see Godzilla go from this calm and collective, smart creature to this ruthless king obsessed with power, you know? Maybe it's the way I'm seeing it, possibly. But I don't know, I just thought it'd be interesting to point out that he's just merciless here. But then again, it could also just be because in this one, he's just fighting destroyer titans like Scylla, Tiamat, Scar King, you know, things like that. But yeah, I thought that'd be interesting to point out. So that's where he goes for the rest of the movie, and he goes Mimi's, he goes sleeping time, and then he doesn't wake up until later. And we finally get to Kong. So the last film was very Kong-centric, and this one is also very Kong-centric. So if you don't like that, then this film probably isn't for you. But we basically follow Kong in the Hollow Earth, and he ends up going to his little cavern and grabbing his axe to go on an adventure. And he ends up meeting Zuko, who isn't really called Zuko in the film. I'm pretty sure he's just called Mini Kong, but whatever. He ends up trying to lure Kong into a trap in which he encounters other primates for the first time, and they jump him. So imagine being the last of your kind, and then you finally find another member of your species, and they just end up trying to kill you. That's just a way to meet them. And we meet who I like to call the Scar King bootlicker. Basically, he's the ape who loves Scar King. He would die for him, you know? He's basically the main villain of the story here. And he ends up trying to defeat Kong and knocking him out. But Kong is like the biggest ape in this film. Like, you see it later on, but he is the tallest and the most buff ape. And it's a pretty impressive feat to go against Godzilla and be able to knock him out. So I feel like that's such a funny thing to see, how every single one of his kind is smaller than him. And these two primates are on top of him, but they're not even able to keep him down for long because he's able to push them off, and then he just goes haywire and beats them all down. So I think that's such a funny but cool thing to see. And there's a point where he even uses Zuko as a weapon, which was just crazy to see, especially when you think about the fact that Zuko's the same size he was in 2017's Kong Skull Island. I love that scene. It got my theater laughing. And then he ends up basically forcing Zuko to show him where Scar King, where the tribe is, because he doesn't know Scar King's existence yet. My bad. And there's a point where Zuko tries to trick Kong by luring him to this pond, acting playful, but there is a drowned viper in there. I think that's what it's called. It's a gigantic snake-like gator creature, and it is a hardcore design. It is, again, the original designs are always amazing. And it's an interesting thing to see how Zuko knew it was there. It's as if, although he's a child, he's been sent out to Hollow Earth to discover things, and he knew about that thing's existence in the water. So it's an interesting piece of world building, you know? And Kong ends up defeating him, and right after that, Zuko is cornered by Kong, basically, and Kong is reaching out to him, and he thinks he's going to hit him because he covers his face up, but then Kong just grabs the axe and the head of the creature. So I think that kind of shows that something's amiss, you know? Scar King, it really is evil, but we'll get to that in a moment. And there's also a scene where they're climbing a gigantic Titan bridge, where the skull Kong is on top of is like 20 times his size. So again, I obsess over stuff like that. I love that kind of thing. Little background details that just blow your mind. My cup of tea. That's my thing. I just love that. I can't imagine what Titan that must have been. Just think about how disturbing that is. There were gigantic Titans going around eating other Titans, like chips. That is horrifying to think about. But yeah, eventually Kong makes it to the tribe, and his initial reaction is one of surprise and shock. The Titans have very expressive emotions in this one, and that's what I love. I absolutely adore that. I'll point them out as I go along, but I just love that the Titans feel like characters. They are their own characters, they have their own emotions, their reactions, they have their own feelings, it's just something that was, I feel, lacking in prior movies, or we just didn't get enough of that. And then having that in this film is just so cool. So one thing I was hoping was that there would be a Planet of the Apes vibe to this, with finding his tribe. And there is. Not as good as Planet of the Apes, but it is there, and I do adore that. And Kong ends up seeing that this tribe is being forced to work with select bodyguards going around and punishing those who are unable to carry stone and carry out their jobs. And this actually angers Kong, but then Zuko tries to stop him, but then Kong is like, no, I'm going to do this. So, he already knows of the Scar King. And Kong ends up helping up the primate. And there's a specific primate, the one that just got knocked down, and he helps up. I don't think he has a name, but I'm going to call him primate number 2. He is helped up by Kong, and it's just such a nice display of Kong's character. Like earlier in the movie when he got jumped at the cliff, despite almost being killed by those primates, when one of them fell off, Kong tried to save him and even brought him up. Of course, he kicked them down after that, but he still helped them up. He was willing to give him a second chance as he gave Zuko a second chance. Despite being tricked by Zuko and almost being killed by a gigantic snake monster, he didn't punish Zuko for that. He still gave him a chance. And I think it's just beautiful to see this kind of character in this film from Kong. It's beautiful, and I believe it's true to his character and who he is. I just love that. I adore it. And so he knocks the bodyguard out, and then we have the scene. Scar King's reveal. Scar King's entrance. The colors, the soundtrack, the sound design. It's just gorgeous. And before I talk about it, I do want to mention the soundtrack. Junkie XL. I didn't like his soundtrack last film. This one, I believe he has a few more bangers than the last one, but I still don't vibe too much with him. I'm not asking for Bear McCreary to return or bring back the Ifukube score, but I'm at least asking for a different artist. Because honestly, Junkie XL's themes are just not really there for me. Like, again, there are some bangers here. In my opinion, my favorite and the best ones are the intro song, the song that plays during Frozen Rio, and Mothra's theme. Those are my favorites, and I believe those are the best ones. But yeah, I don't know, man. Just, I guess try another artist, because I just don't really vibe too much with Junkie XL's soundtracks in general. But yeah, I guess it's fine enough. But this theme right here for Scar King, the way it plays out with the apes chanting is awesome. It's just so good. And then we get to this whole scene, just had my heart pumping in the theaters. It was so good. It was so bone chilling. Just Scar King showing up and then just roaring at the whole tribe, the way they all bow to him, and the tension and intensity that is built up to the fight is just so well done. It is so good. And in this short little scene, you get to see how Scar King is he's quite literally the opposite of Kong. The display you saw of Kong being helpful and willing to give second chances, Scar King is the opposite of that. Like the bootlicker, he goes up to Scar King and is like, hey, Kong's here. Someone brought him here. And he literally roars at him and scares him off. So Scar King is quite literally just the anti-Kong. He is evil Kong. And it's just really cool to see that, because it shows that he is very villainous. He's evil. And I would say he's a great antagonist, but I don't know. He gets his power from Shimo, and since Shimo's being controlled, I don't know. I'm a little mixed on his powers, but overall, as a villain, he is evil. He is straight up evil, and I think he was very well done. But I'll discuss that later. So he basically comes down to Kong's level. Everyone bows to him but Kong. And he even mocks Kong in front of the whole tribe for his metal tooth, which was very sad to see because that's just mean. No one likes bullies. And then he actually ends up roaring at Zuko and, sizing him up. But then I believe I don't know if it's said if it's his like parent or a friend or I don't know, but he has a guardian who attempts to like stop Scar King, and he actually stops. But then he looks over at Kong, and Kong is just in this stance. He doesn't have his fists up, but he's definitely ready to grab onto the axe and pull it out of the ground. And then the way Scar King looks at him is just so evil because then he just kicks the ape into the lava, and then Zuko just looks over the lava and starts crying, which was very sad. And then Kong roars, Scar King roars, the apes all gather back, they all gather around in a circle. They start slamming onto the ground. Scar King takes his whip slash off, and Kong looks around as the apes that were once around him are now chanting, pounding the ground ready for a fight to begin. The It's so well done. The intensity is so great. I just love that moment. And then Scar King ends up actually beating Kong very well. He's very fast and much more skillful than him. And he ends up putting Kong in a chokehold with the whip slash, but Kong is able to just throw Scar King aside, which leads Scar King to whipping out the crystal. The lava falls are stopped as Scar King controls a gigantic titan called Shimo. She is huge. I must say, she is beautiful, though. It is a great design. The designer, Jared Krachevsky, did an awesome job on these characters because Shimo looks magnificent. She is huge. She's one of the biggest titans we have ever seen thus far. And she even has this area around her being frozen, and her shiny purple nails are so cute. But yeah, she's being controlled by Scar King, and she basically freezes Kong. And I like this moment where Kong grabs the axe and attempts to stop the frostbite blast, but regardless of if Kong knew the axe was gonna stop it or not, I think it's just so cool to see because in the last film, the axe was able to absorb the atomic breath and stop it and even charge it up. So in this film, I guess he kind of has like an idea that the frostbite blast will do the same, but it has the opposite effect as it's not radiation, but rather a frostbite blast, which ends up freezing the whole axe and his arm. So I thought that was like such an interesting scene to see. And then he basically ends up escaping and they charge after him. And all the while, the humans are explaining that Scar King was trapped by Godzilla, who defeated his army, which was so interesting to hear about because that just means Godzilla knew Kong wasn't the last of his kind, which is very interesting to think about. And it's also a nice callback to Monarch Legacy of Monsters where Shaw was like explaining that the reason Godzilla was doing what he was doing is to keep the Titans in their world and us in ours, which I just thought was really neat because that's like a nice little connection. So yeah. And basically Kong and Zuko end up going to the place where the humans are, the Iwis, and there's these crystals, and honestly I forgot what the reasoning for it was, but the crystals were basically gonna go haywire and cause some gravity inversion or something like that. I forgot. But yeah, Kong ends up getting a Beast Glove tech upgrade by Dan Stevens Trapper. So I think it's explained that the Beast Glove is made from Mechagodzilla, which if so is so cool. And it looks really nice and is a great weapon. And we actually get I'm not sure, this isn't word for word, but there's a point where Dr. Eileen Andrews' character, or Rebecca Hall's character, says that Godzilla won't come down here unless Kong makes him, I think was the line, which I thought was such an interesting piece of world building because I think it's mentioned that Godzilla, the one we know, is the one who ate a star and went wicked, which if so is such wasted potential because that could have been an antagonist of their own. Like imagine a future movie where Godzilla finds another of his kind and it turns out they're evil. But maybe that's just me. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that Godzilla refuses to come down to Hollow Earth. That's such an interesting line that caught my eye because it's so interesting to hear that he would refuse to come down there, even if it was necessary. So yeah, this is it. Third act, we're leading up to the final battle. Craziness is about to go down, and Gia summons Mothra, which I thought was cool. I just wanted to say Mothra looks amazing in this movie. It's basically the same design, but she just has like a little more yellow and white and orange to her. And she has beautiful markings in her fur too, so that's really cute. And yeah, Mothra basically must come together to unite the duo because Scar King is now aware of their location and he is bringing his army and Shima and he roars. And this actually transitions into Godzilla, who in Antarctica is ready to wake up. I think it was confirmed in the novelization, although don't quote me on this, that the evolved form isn't completely evolved and that he has more to evolve, which if so is really interesting because I wonder what the final design would be. But yeah, it would make sense because I don't think that in the time he fought Tiamat to waking up that was enough time to fully evolve, but he is at least evolved to some extent here because he is pink and he breaks out of the ice and he roars up at the sky and we get a reveal. So I've already given my thoughts on this design, but I think it's really great. Very skinny, but it looks good on film. It definitely helps seeing it in action. So yeah, I just think he looks really great. And he ends up going to Kong, who is in Egypt. And there's this nice shot of like we're in the foreground and Kong is in the background walking around the pyramids. I thought that looked really cool. And then we get to the rematch in Egypt where Godzilla and Kong fight. But before that happens, Kong even tries to talk to Godzilla using hand signs and pointing at the Hollow Earth portal, which I thought was really cool to see. But I like to think that Godzilla knew what he was saying but didn't care. He's like, oh, you're here to cause trouble again, aren't you? And then they have a fight and Godzilla's basically going all out while Kong's just trying to stop him. And there's even a point where Godzilla suplexes Kong, which is crazy to see. You can add that to the craziest Godzilla moments in film history now. And then Kong just breaks it. After getting tossed around the pyramids by Godzilla and the fight with Shimo, Scar King being attacked by the other apes, he has had enough. This is his breaking point. And he just ends up going hammer on Godzilla. And he even knocks him out with the Beast Glove. And Godzilla kind of has like a what WTF moment where he's like, what is this Beast Glove thing? And he ends up trying to bite it, but it does nothing. And then, yeah, he gets knocked out. And then we have Kong carrying him by the tail, which I thought was really funny. And then Godzilla also just goes nuts. And then he uses his atomic breath. And then he eventually pins Kong down, similar to the last movie, stomping on his chest. And he's getting to blast him to bits like he did Scylla. And then he is pushed off and blinded by the lights by Mothra, who has come to Egypt with Gia to unite them. And Godzilla ends up just like looking at them, and Mothra kind of communicates to Godzilla. And again, here's another moment of that beautiful expression where we have Kong's reaction to all this. Seeing Godzilla and Mothra communicate has him in awe. The way he looks at what's going on, the music, the lighting, the effects, it just looks so gorgeous. And I love seeing Kong's reaction. It just adds something to this already beautiful moment between Godzilla and Kong. And then they all roar together. And I guess it's a nice little callback, but I think it was just so beautiful to see these three together. They especially were since these two first opponents he ever fought. The first was Anguirus, but then in 1962 he fought Kong, and then in 64 he fought Mothra. So I thought seeing these three together, especially after the history they had, was such a cool thing to see. It just blew my mind. I can't believe we got a film where a pink, skinny Godzilla roars alongside Mothra and a Kong with a beast glove made from Mechagodzilla. This was the shared universe I always wanted and adored. I just love moments like this. And so Scar King and his army show up to the human characters and tribe, and then they basically have an all-out war because Dan Stevens ends up bringing a pack of Verticine. So remember how I mentioned them earlier? Well, here they are, ready to attack, and they end up using their electric powers to stop the army, which is successful for the most part, but a few remain. And then Shimo ends up just blasting all of them and blasting the crystals from touching. And then we have another scene where Scar King reacts to Godzilla's roar, and he's at first surprised and maybe even scared, and then he just gets angry and pissed off. And we get the money shot, Godzilla and Kong running with each other. My, the monsterverse has come far. It's beautiful, I tell you. And then Scar King and Shimo start charging with their army behind them. Mothra enters the scene, Suko comes in, Godzilla and Kong are roaring with each other. It's so beautiful. And then Kong rides Godzilla, and Godzilla goes croc mode again. And then they all jump towards each other, and we get that wide shot, and then a face shot of each of the Titans. It just looks so good. And then the gravity goes haywire. You thought the battles couldn't get any weirder? Well, they just did. They just got crazy because now we have all of them flying around Hollow Earth. We see Godzilla fly, skilled and experienced he is. But then again, he is in water all the time, which is kind of the same as flying if you think about it. But you know what? That's another discussion for another day. And then we have Zuko battling it out with Scar King's bootlicker, the absolute worst Titan in this film. I know. He's annoying. And then we have Shimo battling Godzilla. Despite being much bigger than him, he does not care. He is battling her with all his might. And there's a point where she freezes him, and then Mothra teams up with Godzilla and then stops Shimo from using the blast, and then Godzilla just breaks out of the ice. So cool to see. And then we have Scar King using his whip slash and just jumping around Hollow Earth, attacking Kong. And then the gravity goes back to normal, and then Scar King's bootlicker dies. I wish Doug was in this movie, actually, because, I don't know. Let's get him in the final battle for the next one. But yeah, then we have Mothra flying around, saving the Heave from falling down. And there's actually this cool shot where Scar King is jumping into one of the portals, or attempting to, with Kong right behind him. And there's the big crystals in the background, the rocks all falling down, the yellow heavenly light. It's a beautiful shot. I love it. And then Godzilla and Shimo are just kind of play fighting with their hands, and they also fall into the portal. When this happens, Kong loses his axe, which gives Doug an idea. Why am I saying Doug? I am obsessed with Doug, which gives Zuko an idea and jumps into the portal with the axe right behind them. And there's again another really cool shot of the expressive face of the Titans where Scar King reacts to the sun. But more importantly, and interestingly to me, he reacts to humans. There's this shot of him just looking down at them in awe, which I thought was really interesting and cool to see. Because again, I'm a sucker for world building. So when he had that reaction, I just kind of thought about it for a moment, and it looked really cool. And then the final battle happens. Brazil is frozen over. Shimo freezes the sky, and Godzilla and Kong come out and battle the Titans. It's a team up, 2v2. Just like King of the Monsters, and they battle it out. There's a lot of really cool moments, although something I kind of noticed was that Godzilla and Shimo are just more or less tossing each other and tackling each other, which my family didn't really like either, and that's understandable. And one of my biggest gripes with this film is there isn't a beam battle. In King of the Monsters, we had Godzilla and Ghidorah's beam battle. In GVK, we had Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. There is no beam battle in this film, and that really upset me. I don't know. I just needed that. I think if that was in the final battle, that would have made it the best final battle. I still really like it, and it has to be one of my favorite final battles in the Monsterverse, but that beam lock was missing, and that really irked me, but oh well, that's missing. And then basically the crystal is broken up after Godzilla breaks the whip slash from Scar King, who ends up shooting his atomic breath at Scar King, and he effortlessly avoids it. So that was interesting to see. And Zuko ends up destroying the crystal after coming out of Hollow Earth. And then we have the funny scene where Kong basically beats up Scar King, tosses him to Godzilla. Godzilla orders Shimo to freeze him, and she does. And this is one of my favorite moments in the movie because we have Kong, his expression here as he looks at Scar King frozen, the music triumphantly building up as the villain has been defeated, Scar King's face, the way he looks at Kong and Kong looks back at him. Easily one of my favorite moments in this film, if not my favorite. And I love the soundtrack here because again, this part is a banger. And he ends up destroying Scar King, which was awesome to see. And Godzilla ends up healing the sky by blasting his atomic breath into it. And then the movie ends with Godzilla returning to the Roman Colosseum to continue to sleep. Mothra covers back the crystals and adds her little shield webs back up and flies in Hollow Earth, which again, I think is so cool to see Mothra in the Hollow Earth. Up to this point, we've just seen Godzilla and Kong, her being there. I think that added to it though. And then Kong returns to the tribe with Shimo no longer being controlled and Zuko, and they all roar together as the tribe lays their hands up. So overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I mentioned the few negatives that I have, and those are really it. Basically, the humans still I wouldn't say aren't as enjoyable as like Kong Skull Island. Soundtrack's kind of mid. That beam battle is missing. And some of the CGI is a little iffy, but I can forgive that with how much Titan action there is. And I really enjoyed the monsters. They're very expressive. They feel like characters. And overall, the film is really fun. I'll say more about this in my Monsterverse celebration video, which is coming out on May 16th when the 2014 anniversary drops. But thank you to Yoshimitsu Wano. May he be resting in peace and sleeping well above in heaven. But he is basically the reason the Monsterverse exists. So I thank that man for such a beautiful cinematic universe. It has its flaws, but what film doesn't have its flaws? Overall, I really enjoyed this film and I really loved it. And I really like the kaiju action. The Titans are awesome. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about it. And thank you all so much for watching and see you all next time. Bye-bye. Let me know what you guys think about this film in the comments because I'm interested in knowing it. Bye.